Hello YouTube, this is AJ Nivens and you're watching Palettes for Oil Painting. First up I have here is a white plastic palette. This is called the San Francisco palette and this is used for watercolors. I would not recommend this for oils at all because it'll be hard to clean and you'll get nothing more than a jumbled up mess, and it's not worth paying the money to get one of these. So do not use a plastic palette like this. Use what I do suggest. This here is a wooden palette, and as you can see, this has been used and it's been cleaned off. Traditionally, wooden palettes were used for oils, but unfortunately, when you get a wooden palette, it's going to look like this, and it's just going to be a piece of wood. What people fail to understand is with a wooden palette you have to season it like you would a Dutch oven, a cast iron pot of sorts. If you use a wooden palette, this is what you need to do to it. I didn't do it to the back yet because I haven't used this side, but what you do is you take linseed oil and you cover it with linseed oil and you let it soak in. You can do this either with a painting knife or a rag. What I usually do is pour linseed oil on it, take a painting knife and spread it across and let it soak in. Do this about 2 or 3 times, and what that does is it seasons your palette so you can paint on it and the paint does not soak into it. And if you use a wooden palette, regardless of the shape or size, always oil it first. Next up I have, I'm not quite sure the name of the material here. This is a spot of acrylic. This comes off really good when we work with acrylics. This is a palette that's easier to clean. You don't have to oil it. The only thing is, I don't like palettes that are white because it makes me misjudge my coloring on my paintings. So I normally go with a palette that has a darker background. This is called a Passade, as it's been pronounced. Basically, a seasoned palette that has a darker background to it so that my colors aren't so bright and intense on the palette and dull and dark on the canvas. If you can get a palette to like a neutral gray color when you clean it and whatnot, which is basically this area, that would work great for helping you judge your colors. Just because I personally don't like a white palette doesn't mean you can't use one. This cleans off pretty easily. Any paint that's left on it, you can use a painting knife to scrape off. This is acrylic, so all I have to do is put some water on and scrape it. It'll be killing again. But I find this was actually quite useful. Another suggestion you can use is a sheet of glass. I'm not quite sure what type of glass this is, but it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. It's kind of heavy, but what is great about glass is the fact that you can scrape off your paint a lot easier. If it's dried on there, all you gotta do is take a razor blade to it and it comes clean. With a sheet of glass, you can put anything underneath it to change the coloring. You can put white, you can put gray, you can put anything underneath it so that you can judge your colors better. Get a piece of glass that is a good thickness. If it's pretty thin, I would tape it around here, but this has been all designed as a flat sheet of glass. It's got some chips on the side, that's the reason why it was given to me, but this will work good as a palette too. If you like to hold your palette, I suggest using one with the thumb hole. Another cheap and inexpensive way to paint, if you don't like cleaning your palette, they do have disposable palettes, but those are quite expensive and you can't always get to the art store on time. So this is wax paper. I realize this is kind of old, but what you can do is you can take wax paper and you can put it over the top of a board, cardboard, or even over the top of one of your palettes. Tape it down, use it to paint on, and just tape it. Take it off when you're done. Wax paper is cheap and inexpensive, and this is a great alternative to a disposable palette. You can even, if you want, get the big Bob Ross palette. I originally was wanting to start doing knife painting, and when you do knife painting you use a lot of paint, and so I got a big palette for it. So I haven't really used this that much. My palette, what I like, I have what is called a palette box, and this is my palette box. And this is a box made by Masterson. I don't think this is the exact Masterson, but Masterson makes it. And it seals like a Tupperware container. And you can put your paint in it, and it keeps your paint from drying out as fast. And as you can see, this is my palette. I don't like the thumb hole. I don't really like holding my palette, even though I've done it in the past a couple times. I usually have my handful of rags or brushes, so this is what I use as a palette. This is basically just a piece of wood, and I oiled it. And I cut it to the size of the palette box. The palette box is 12 by 16. A lot of your rectangle shaped palettes are that size, and this is what I use for my palette. When I'm done, I put the lid on and I put the whole thing in the freezer. If you've ever watched any of Paul Pume's videos, you'll find out that he puts his paints in the freezer to preserve them. I don't like to waste a lot of paint. I will use a lot, but I hate to waste paint, so I usually keep them in my palette box and I put them in the freezer when I'm done so they don't dry out on me. And this is what I use for a palette. I find it quite useful. I take this with me when I go in plein air painting, and my colors are all there, and I don't have to hunt and peck for colors, so everything's right there and it's quite useful. So that is a selection of palettes that you can use for oil painting, and I will see you next time.